This segment brought to you by our good friends at America First Policies. They are fighting every day for the advancement of President Trump's America First agenda. So that's why I love having them as a sponsor on the John Fredericks Radio Network. And this segment is brought to you by them because we need to enforce our borders and our immigration laws. That's the job of ICE, immigrations and custom enforcement. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE stop corrupt employers who exploit illegal aliens for cheap labor instead of paying Americans a decent wage. Every day they fight traffickers who sell women and children into the most despicable forms of slavery. Every day they stop drug smugglers and pushers who peddle death in our communities. Without ICE, criminals who commit murder and rape and kill people on our highways would never be caught and deported. Yet, unbelievably, there are politicians today who actually want to abolish ICE. That's true. These politicians would fire the very people who are protecting our great country. We can't let that happen. Call Congress today, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121, and tell them to support the brave men and women of immigrations and custom enforcement. For more information, go to americafirstpolicies.org. That's americafirstpolicies.org. This message has been paid for and authorized by America First Policies Incorporated. Joining us now, Morgan Griffith, Congressman, 9th District, Virginia. That's the Southwest Virginia area. Congressman, great to have you.
Good to be with you. I hope you're doing well this morning.
Now that I'm talking to you, I'm always doing better because I really got to get your perspective. I've told you this before because a lot of us will be sitting here talking about different things, and then somebody will say, well, what do you think Griffith thinks about this? And so that's why we have to have you on. So let's go to Helsinki. What does Morgan Griffith think about the press conference, now the walk back, the rebuttal, the Rod Rothenstein offer to not release the names until after Helsinki, and Trump said, no, get him out now. What do you make of this whole thing, Morgan?
Well, let's start with the Rod Rosenstein issue and putting those names out. I do think that the president made the right decision to have that go ahead and put those names out. That was, as you said earlier, a chip that he put on the table. He gave him behind the scenes the ability to say, come on, this is where we're headed. You got to work with me here to get some things done positively between the United States and the Russian Federation. Or else, this is what's going to happen. And it's unfortunate, but, you all meddled and we have to deal with it. And I think that's what happened behind the scenes, more or less, obviously different language. But I think that was a chip that the president wanted to have on the table. And then, he went out and he had a poor day of messaging. And, look, you're going 24/7 like President Trump does. You're going to do that. I wish he would stay off Twitter sometimes when he's working hard and doing good things. But, we have to look at the overall picture. And I actually said that as soon as this happened, and I've been criticized a little bit by those folks who are always critical. But, I said, look, you can't judge foreign policy based on one press conference. You have to look at the totality, where we go over the next several months. The president didn't come out and say that we're going to roll back our sanctions for these bad acts. It was really interesting. I heard one Democrat on the radio started talking about Crimea, and I scratched my head. And I said, Crimea? Seriously? All of that happened under President Obama. And, if somebody was going to push back hard on Russia immediately, it might have had an impact. But Obama didn't do anything. And I don't know what the intel folks were telling him about that situation, but somebody should have seen that coming. Russia absolutely desires always to have Crimea. I tell my kids all the time, and they have listened to me read the poem to him, The Charge of the Light Brigade by Alfred Lord Tennyson. What was that all about? Mm-hmm. The Turks, the Brits, and the French were fighting the Russians over Crimea. I mean, this is a major asset for the Russian Federation. And, yes, we should have sanctions on them, and yes, we should not have invaded Crimea to counteract. But you got to believe that the Obama administration could have done something different early on to have stopped that. But President Trump has to deal with that now, and he's got to deal with this meddling issue, which I don't think anybody ever had a question that the Russians were meddling. The question has always been collusion, and there isn't any, as the president has repeatedly said, and we haven't seen any evidence after this long time period. But that's my take on the whole thing.
So, Congressman, look, we have these two separate issues, right? We have the one issue, which is the original purpose of the special counsel, which was to investigate any potential collusion between then-candidate Trump, operatives in his campaign, and the Russian government. And what that means is basically you help us win, you give us money under the table, you give us something, you help us win, and then we'll look the other way with some of the things you want to do, and we'll support your agenda. That's collusion. Well, there's no evidence of that. 18 months, $100 million, all these agents, zero. Other piece of it is, did the Russians meddle, get involved, call it what you will, attempt to influence our electoral process, or just gum up the works? Yes. But they've been doing it since 1919. I mean, this is like, I guess as a student of history, I'm incredulous to this. Because it's like, well, they did this in 2012, 2008, 2004, 1920, 1932, 1936. I mean, what makes 2016 different? They've been doing it for 99 years. And all of a sudden, it's like the end of the world. And I think what the president said today, if you heard, or yesterday, what he said is, look, if they try to do it again, this time we're prepared for it. It's different. It's cyber now. It's not Gus Hall running around getting money from the KGB to get on the ballot for the Communist Party USA. But they've been doing it for so long. So, I mean, what should the president do now? Additional sanctions? What? What do you think?
Well, I do think that I do think we probably ought to take a look at additional sanctions. There have been some introduced in Congress. I think we ought to take a serious look at that. And I think that's the appropriate response. But, you know, we also have to continue our dialogue with the Russians. They are a major world power. They may not be a superpower anymore, but they still have a lot of nuclear weapons. They still have militaristic designs on countries that are supposed to be our friends. And I'm not talking about Germany in this case, although they probably have designs on that too, would love to control that. But, you know, we have Ukraine, we have Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moravia, all of which are countries that the Russian imperialist nature, which has existed for hundreds of years, would love to control and dominate. And so we have to be careful there. And President Trump is right to talk about natural gas. And it is kind of interesting, you know, the Germans want us to protect them from the Russian bear, but they're feeding the Russian bear. And, you know, it's like the signs say, don't feed the bears. And I think in this case that's exactly what Germany's been doing. And they need to be looking for other sources. And a lot of these other countries, and I've talked to some of their representatives that I mentioned, Lithuania, Moravia, they would love to get American natural gas because right now their only source is from Russia, and the Russians use that as a weapon. They shut off your gas if you're not doing what you want them to. Why would the Germans want that and then have us put our tanks up there? But that's exactly what they're doing. It is illogical, in my opinion, from a German perspective. But it's really silly from an American perspective for us to continue to pay a whole lot more for military defense than the Germans do when we're paying to defend their borders and they are feeding the enemy. And when I say feeding,
yes,
I'm not talking about food. We're not talking about starving people. We're talking about giving them cash, which helps them build their military and gets them stronger.
You know, I tell you what, you are spot on with that. And look, I think the Germans have a right to get energy wherever they please. They're a sovereign nation. We shouldn't be leveraging that. But when we're involved in paying a large bulk of their defense against the people they're giving the cash to buy the energy from, I mean, even a layman has to look at this and say, well, that doesn't make any sense, that you're going to be giving billions of dollars to the very government that the U.S. is then got 21 bases and 35,000 troops stationed there to protect you against. So you're giving them their money to buy weapons and then taking our money in order to protect you. That doesn't make any sense. Let's get our troops home, 35,000, maybe put them on the southern border, stop that. Let's close our bases or let the Germans pay for it. And then they can buy their energy for whoever the hell they please. But it's like they're buying it almost on our dime. I don't think that makes any sense to anybody, Congressman.
Yeah.
And I think you're spot on with that. So where do we go from here? Obviously, the Democrats are going crazy on it. I'm going to play Warner's clip here.
There is unanimity from the intelligence community, from our very own tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, from Europeans across the globe for that matter, not just Europe, in Europe, of Russian meddling and interference. And they did it before. They will do it again. Yes, were there things that the Obama administration and our intelligence community should have done better in terms of notifying the public before the 2016 elections? Absolutely. But at least everyone engaged from the Obama administration and the intelligence community admits the facts. The fact that Mr. Trump won't accept facts. The goal of the intelligence community is to speak truth to power. And when the so-called power here refuses to accept that truth, we're in a very dangerous spot.
All right, so what is he saying? Do you have any idea?
No, not really. I mean, the intelligence community is to provide the best intelligence they can to the executives. I'm not really sure what his point is. I mean, I think he's trying to say that or to make the case that Trump doesn't believe that the Russians meddled. I've never thought the president felt that way.
Right.
I know his comments the other day led to that confusion, but they instantly jumped on it. Now, I would note with some interest, and I don't have any direct recollection of Warner saying this, but lots of other Democrats did. This is the same intelligence community that Trump is supposed to take 100% and do exactly what they say. That told President Bush that he needed to go into Iraq, which the Democrats then yelled and screamed and said that Bush lied and he shouldn't have gone into Iraq. So, you got to believe there's some politics being played here. I think there was meddling. I know the president believes there was meddling. Everybody thinks there was meddling. The question always was not, was there meddling? The question was there any collusion? There's no evidence of that. But I don't know what Warner's trying to get at there.
I don't either. And as far as the meddling is concerned, I think the president's point is that, they might have meddled, but they had no influence on the outcome. Because one of the things the Democrats are trying to do with this is excuse away the fact that Hillary Clinton didn't go to Wisconsin and Michigan and somehow discredit his victory and say that the Russians had something to do with it. Even if you take all their interference on face value, they didn't do anything to influence anybody and change any outcome. So that's part of it. But
and don't believe John Fredericks on that. Believe Barack Obama. He's the one who said that first.
Exactly. He did. And, and then back to the intel community, I mean, you mentioned the WMDs, which, I bring up probably once a week, so nobody ever forgets about that because I was so opposed to both of these wars. But it was also, Congressman, this is the same intel community, and I'm not running them down. This is just, fact. Fact is fact. Everybody can have their opinion, then there's facts. This is the same intel community that told President Bush that within a 3-year period that their intel said that the Afghan army would be up to the task of protecting themselves from the Taliban. That was in 2001. 17 years later, they can't even protect their own capital. So they're incapable of it. More bad intel. So I guess now we're in Afghanistan with 10, 15,000 troops in perpetuity. So, look, even people outside the government that are living in Radford, Virginia, or Salem, they got to look at this and say, well, I love our intel community. I love all the people that serve us there. But, maybe some of the things they've come up with haven't been exactly accurate, right? I mean, that's just fact, isn't it?
Well, it is fact. And let me say this. Our Intel community does a great job. But Intel is never perfect. It has never been perfect. It will never be perfect. They're trying to look through a very murky glass crystal ball, and they get little bits and pieces. And sometimes the bits and pieces they get lead them to the wrong conclusion. And I think that's what happened in Iraq. But I think to come out and, suddenly we now know it was a misstatement or something, but on one press conference, one statement, claim that President Trump never listens to the Intel committee is just silly, or never listens to the Intel community. It's just silly. But, they've got to have something to constantly be attacking the president on. I think, particularly when you're talking about foreign relations and foreign matters, you got to give the executive, a little bit of time. You can be critical of the direction they're going. I was critical of Obama for not doing more about Crimea. Everybody saw that coming. But at the same time, you can't go out and say that he's, totally disregarding the information. I don't think that President Obama completely disregarded the information he was getting, and I don't think that President Trump does. What you have to do is look at it over a period of months or years and then determine whether that policy was right. As you've said, the Bush policy, obviously based on the Intel, the Bush policy went in the wrong direction, and that's unfortunate, and he will be judged by history.
No question about it, and everybody knows I think he's going to go down as the worst president in history. You don't have to comment on that. I want to thank you for your time. Congressman Morgan Griffith, Republican, 9th District, Virginia. Hey, by the way, just got the financial disclosures out, and your Democratic opponent down there, he doesn't have any money.
Well, he's got more than my opponents have had in the past. At this point in the campaign, he's raised about $320. Now, he's spent a lot of it, and he's only got $100 left. But that's still twice as much as Ben Klein's opponent has. So we're taking him seriously, and I'm out there working hard.
You're always working hard, and we wish you the best. Now, people want more info on your campaign or what you're working on. Where do they go?
Well, for the campaign, they would go to Morgan Griffith for Congress, and I always forget our website, but Morgan Griffith at house.gov.
Let me help you out.
Just go to the website.
Griffith.house.gov.